Andrew Yang, Humanity First Tour. Okay, so Andrew Yang is on what he calls his Humanity First Tour, and he made a stop in Des Moines, Iowa. And I'll go over what he talked about there. But make sure to check his website periodically to see where he's going because he's stopping in cities all across the country, doing these like town hall sort of deals, hitting some colleges. So it'd be cool if he stopped in a town near you. So stay up to date. Okay, so let's jump right into it. First question: how do you pay for UBI? One of the most common questions. Yesterday, my dad, who I've been trying to turn to an Andrew Yang fan, asked how's he going to pay for it. We have a $22 trillion debt, and it's just how is it going to happen? And I explained to him what Andrew explained here in Des Moines, that through a VAT tax, a 10% VAT tax, which is half of the European rate of 20%, will generate $800 billion per year. So that's going to be the bulk of it. Okay, and then Andrew goes on to explain something that he calls the magic, which I think is kind of funny. The magic of the trickle-up economy. Now, when UBI gets implemented, that the money that $1K a month is going to go directly into localized economies, neighborhood economies, very small-scale state economies, and it's going to generate $400 billion in new tax revenue just via the economic growth. So you have $800 billion from the VAT, and you have $400 billion in new tax revenue via the UBI. So that's $1.2 trillion total right there. So if that's not all of it, that's the bulk of it. That could be even 90% approximately of how you're going to pay for it. Obviously, there's going to be some cuts somewhere in government with social programs because UBI is an opt-in, so we've gone over that before. But the bulk of it is through the VAT and new tax revenue via the implementation of UBI. Okay. Moving on, Andrew. This wasn't a question, but he was just talking and he called out the DNC, which I love. He called out the DNC for banning Fox News from the 2020 primaries. So if you don't know, the DNC reached out to Fox News and said, "We don't want you. We don't want you near the primaries or candidates. Basically, go away." And Andrew called it out for what it is. He said it's very counterproductive. And he said, quote, "By converting Republicans back to Democrats is how we're going to win in 2020, end quote. Totally. It blows my mind that why wouldn't you want to reach out to the other side? This is all the Democrats talk about. They always talk about bipartisanship and reaching across the aisle in so many capacities, but not this one. What are you talking about? It's election. The Democrats are so stupid sometimes. It's mind-blowing how dumb they are. Okay? It's just ridiculous to not reach out to the opposition here and try to accumulate votes. Oh, it's crippling how stupid they are. Anyways, he nailed that. Okay, and this was cute. Climate change came up, and there was I think it was 7 or 8 young students dressed as penguins, and they presented this question. It's pretty long, but let's see how it goes. Okay, so, like I said, it was about climate change. Quote, "In the past, when you were asked about climate change, people with financial struggles have the attitude that penguins can wait in line," end quote. Interesting, but that was just the first part. Second part, quote, "We just found out that the second largest penguin colony collapsed due to ice melt last year, and 150,000 people were displaced by the deadliest wildfire in California's history. And just right here in the Midwest, thousands were displaced by catastrophic flooding." And the question is, quote, "Will you adjust your campaign focus from UBI to avoiding climate catastrophes?" End quote. Okay. He said, flat out, quote, "100% yes," end quote. And then he went on to say, if I ever suggested that I wasn't fully committed to climate change, I conveyed the wrong message to you. So he's basically saying, it was basically more or less an apology without saying I'm sorry, but he just wanted to write that in case if he came across that way. But like as far as climate change goes, it seems like Andrew Yang has tied UBI to climate change somehow. He basically said, "quote We need to get the economic boot off of people's throats." End quote. And that would lead to productivity in other areas of life, including climate change. Like we can just get out of the scarcity mindset. If we get UBI implemented, we can then focus on issues like this. So he tried to patch them together. He tried to correlate those two. Is it a stretch? I don't know. Leave me a comment down below if you think that's a stretch. It could be, but he's speaking very generally and very relatively. So, let me know what you think about that. Okay, affordable housing came up. Someone asked about affordable housing and what he plans on doing about it, and he said, once again, UBI is the answer. And it brings up an issue of rent control, though, because this wasn't covered, but I'm just asking, like, is rent control going to be an issue when UBI is implemented? Okay, Andrew Yang becomes president, UBI is passed, and do greedy landlords all across the country just start inflating their rent prices? We're already having issues with rent control in America right now, present day 2019. So it's kind of like, is there going to be a rent control policy attached to the UBI legislation? I'm just curious about that. I'm just throwing that out there. I'd like to hear your feedback about that. But Andrew Yang basically says UBI is the answer. It just gives you more money. It'll help cover some housing costs, and it just makes sense, right? Okay, another question. Do you think it is beneficial to give the freedom dividend to millionaires and billionaires? Okay, so he gave 3 reasons why we should. 1, giving UBI to millionaires and billionaires destigmatizes UBI across the board. 2, it's not seen as a rich to poor transfer. Okay. 3, no need for monitoring or means testing. So those are his reasons why we should give it to millionaires and billionaires. Okay, voter age came up. Andrew Yang is for changing the voter age from 18 to 16, and he had a great explanation why. I'll leave the video down below. Make sure you watch this whole thing, but he said something to the effect that lowering the voter age would be transformative, and studies show that the younger someone votes or starts voting, the more likely it is for them to be a lifelong voter. So, very important aspects to that. Okay, so that was like the ones I picked out. There's definitely more. Like I said, I'll leave the video down below. Make sure you watch it. Make sure you see where Andrew Yang is coming to next, as he is on tour. But leave me a comment, like, share, subscribe, click the bell.